Ranger. And this is another episode of the Friday Road Rant. So let's rant. Here's a Friday Road Rant. I've been seeing this blowing up, especially over the past about 6 months, since the Indian Challenger was released. And we're going to talk about the Harley-Indian rivalry. They make the same sort of bikes. They are priced very similarly. Okay, they have somewhat similar sales models. They have a similar machine family, if you will, as far as the design and the hierarchy of their model ranges. Those are similar. The question is, for many people that are looking at purchasing a motorcycle and are specifically looking at they want an American cruiser, whether that's an American sport cruiser, an American commuter, an American touring cruiser, whatever. Those are your two options. You're either going to get an Indian or you're going to get a Harley, okay? So let's talk about them. Let's talk about them. And I'm not going to necessarily spill my conclusions until later, but let's talk about Harley. Now, I had the opportunity last summer to visit the Harley-Davidson factory museum and then go on a factory tour over in Milwaukee. Okay, so let's just, here's the thing about Harley. Okay, the biggest argument is that for why Harley is a superior choice over virtually anyone else. They are the longest continually operated American motorcycle company. And that's a fact. That is true. Harley-Davidson made bikes starting in 1903. It's a really cool story, and I'm going to skip a lot of stuff because I'm not an HD historian, and going to the museum is totally worth it. Even if you don't ride a Harley, it's a really cool piece of American history. Suffice it to say, Harley-Davidson started making bikes in 1903, and the only time they stopped making bikes, really, was when the government asked them to, hey, can you make other stuff? You know, when the government was like, you are a manufacturer with manufacturing capacity, we're fighting an international war on multiple fronts on 3 different continents, will you be a part of, you know, the American war effort? And so they were, right? And even then they made motorcycles for the Army. So that's the thing. And I can already hear people saying, well, what about AMF? What about, no, okay, I get it. They were bought and owned by another American company at one point. And yeah, AMF did virtually nothing to help Harley's name, nothing to help Harley's manufacturing prowess. It was a dark chapter for the company, but Harley-Davidson bought itself back. And still, every single one of those years, between the end of World War II and up till now, Harley has been making bikes. They have been making Harley-Davidson motorcycles every single year since then. And there's a reason that they are known for what they're known for, right? All old, unreliable AMF, leaky Harley jokes aside, Harley make really good, high-quality, reliable, fun bikes. And they have for decades, for well over a century total. And so that's really the biggest argument for Harley, right? Now, the Indian itself, trademark revived on and off since I believe the 1940s or 50s. You know, they've been owned by several different companies, but most recently reestablished by Indian, okay? Here's what they've got going for them. There is an appeal to being an old name with new energy. There's something attractive about that. Okay, so I'll give that to Indian, for sure. The other thing Indian has going for it, and they aren't constrained by their own history. And I think that's a weakness that Harley has to deal with. Harley has to deal with being constrained by their own history, you know? And I consider that a disadvantage. The advantage in Indian's favor, on the other side of that coin, is they're making fast bikes for touring bikes. Like the Challenger is a quick bike. that is definitely a nod to the performance bagger segment and performance bagger culture that is being carved out and has become a trend among custom builders. So I think in that sense, Indian had the advantage in that they did that first. They did that before Harley did that. Now, have people been building performance baggers out of Harleys for years? Yes. Have people been tearing up drag strips on Harleys, modified Harleys? Yes. That is true. But Indian's advantage is that for Road Glide special money, you're getting better than CVO performance. And I haven't ridden an Indian, but I've ridden alongside many Indian motorcycles, and I've heard more than a few pull into parking lots and turn around, and I was expecting to see a Harley based upon what I heard, and what I saw was an Indian motorcycle. So they make good sounding bikes too. So there's that. So what does it really come down to? Harley versus Indian. Well, if you're debating between a Harley and an Indian, so I'll go ride them. And then just buy whichever one you prefer. Because here's the thing. Here's the thing about having only two major players in the American motorcycle cruiser market. And we've already seen this mechanism at work. We've already seen it at work. But when people buy Indian, Harley notices. Harley really notices, and Harley's trying to figure out why people prefer Indians, and they can get that information from market research. But notice how Indian announced the Challenger and announced these power numbers, and what did Harley-Davidson release a couple months later? The 131 cubic inch crate motor. Okay, so Indian says, I will raise you one Challenger, 120 some horsepower, 100 and some odd foot-pound of torque. What do you got, Harley? And Harley said, I see your Challenger, and I raise you one 131 cubic inch crate motor. Right? So we've already seen, when Indian makes moves, Harley responds. Harley notices. So yeah, I got no qualms about saying, dude, just buy whatever you prefer. Part of me knows that the people that are not like super strongly and inherently biased to think that Harley make the absolute best bikes in the world, period. People who don't carry around that bias, a lot of them are going to buy Indian. Because Indian make really, really good bikes. And I think we have to admit that. They have seen sales go up every year since they started bringing models to market. Indian is a growing company. So I think people buying Indian is actually really good for Harley-Davidson from an innovation standpoint. Now, I can hear people say, well, if too many people buy Indian, Harley goes under, and you're 100% right. I think we also need, I think the context that we have that debate under and within is the fact that like something like 55% of new motorcycle registrations every year are Harley-Davidson motorcycles. If people buy a few more Indians, Harley is not suddenly going to disappear. But what might happen is that us faithful Harley buyers, that some guys are buying a new bike every year, every 2 years, every 4 years, every 5 years, whatever that pattern may be. But the better that Indian does based upon the products they deliver, the better products Harley-Davidson is going to turn around and respond with, which ends up being really good for us Harley riders. That 131, that will become a CVO engine. And CVO engines always turn out to be sort of middle tier engines on the next generation of bikes. You know, there was a time at which a 103 was one of the biggest motors you could get in a Harley. Right? Now the biggest motor you can get from the factory is a $1.17, and the biggest motor you can put in your Harley from Harley-Davidson is a 131. And Indian is a part of that recent development. So as far as which one is better than the other, I've only ever ridden a Harley. I can't tell you, but I can tell you that having another competitor is good for us. Innovation comes out of competition. And so as Harley riders, you know, if I hear someone want to go pick up an Indian, I might give them a little bit of a hard time, but I'm not gonna freak out just because someone decides they want to buy an Indian. That sale might be the one that tips the scales to get Harley to really innovate on the next round of bikes. So we'll, you know, you never know. But I know this is a pretty touchy subject for current Harley riders. It would be interesting to hear some opinions and thoughts from current Indian riders. So if you ride an Indian, tell us why. Do you like it? Do you not like it? What do you think about it? What do you think about Harleys? If you've switched from a Harley to an Indian, why? You know, if you've switched from an Indian to a Harley, why? If you've ridden both, maybe you even own both. I know there are plenty of riders that have got one of each. What are your thoughts? What are your opinions on the bikes and the individual companies themselves? So if you found this interesting, if this was helpful, if this was not totally the worst video you've ever seen on motorcycles, hit like, hit subscribe, leave me a comment. If you guys made it to the end of this video, you're the best. You're what makes YouTube fun. I appreciate you. I'm the two-wheel teacher, and I'm gonna catch you guys out on the road.